Mr Speaker, I acknowledge particularly the first half of the previous member's speech because it's their positive nature that most parties seem to be approaching this bill, and as a member of FEC I do note, and I'm sure his colleagues, that member's colleagues will be raising those particular issues he picked up on, but I do again acknowledge the positive nature and essentially the good public policy changes that are going on here with the bill, or at least in the administration and the implementation of student loans. First of all, let me just congratulate the Minister, officials and all those that were consulted in leading up to this bill. In fact, as part of other briefings and discussions in around things of tax and revenue, we learned that I believe some of the consultation about this bill was on Facebook, using the new medium, I suppose, but there was a very good feedback and engagement of particularly students, well obviously students I suppose, but those that actually will be affected particularly by this bill who are engaged in tertiary education right now. And by and large and on the whole, the essence of their message was just get on with it, do it, because this is how I do my banking, this is how I communicate, it's all online. If I want to know further information, let me click or give you a phone call. But actually, my life's very busy and I just want to see what I owe, when I owe it, and the terms and conditions around it. They see it as just another expense, if you like, on their outgoings. And I don't mean that in a facetious way, but they just didn't seem to see a different kind of platform. So the acknowledgement of the direction that this has taken, it is a bit of a biggie because this one, as the Minister noted, student loans is one of those things that have particularly stress-tested the various hard and software in inland revenue, simply because of the nature of the loan from a particular department who grew up, whose origins are just simply revenue gathering, not essentially loans, then the complication of 0% loans, and then plus the other changes that have gone through over the years. Mr Speaker, it's particularly some key points here. This bill, this proposal, the key words here makes it easier not only to operate the student loan system but also for the final user of the student loan system, as I spoke to a little bit about earlier. At the end of the day, it's an overused term, but I'm quite sure it's win-win all over the place. Should be a win for the taxpayer and the cost of administration of this policy, but also in the ability for those that have student loans to comply with the obligations they've signed up for when they originally took on their student loan. There is, of course, questions around some of the issues that the previous member raised about, in fact, if the taxpayer themselves if taxpayers should expect some kind of return on the investment in the education, tertiary education of someone that's got a student loan, and in these proposals measuring it by some kind of returns or success in these studies. That's a fair discussion to have, I think, and I guess it will be somewhat robust at Select Committee around those issues. But I'm very, very comfortable as a taxpayer, and I'm sure many others are, then the stresses and strains on our budget at the moment, that actually it's a fair bet. It's fair on all taxpayers that actually the money they are investing in tertiary education, particularly via student loans, that those are enjoying that investment from the taxpayer actually are doing their utmost and achieving some of their personal KPIs, and then achieving the ability to maintain their student loan. Mr Speaker, it is about streamlining, it is about making it easier for borrowers to keep track of their loans. The Labor concern there about the annual assessment versus the pay period, fair enough, that's an interesting discussion to have actually, and there'll be 1,001 different examples, but that is a fair discussion to have. I do acknowledge, though, there are other points in the bill where some penalties have changed, they've been clarified, they've been simplified, so there is a little bit of balance to that, which I'm sure will form part of our discussion and submissions at Select Committee. But actually, at this stage, I'm comfortable with that, but I'm more than open to engage in that discussion, as obviously we will at Select Committee, Mr Speaker. One just key point, though, we just cannot have this discussion about anything about student loans, but simply acknowledging the size of student loans. It is an asset on the Crown's balance sheet, or to put it the way I always like to put it, it is an asset on taxpayers' balance sheet. Every New Zealander has actually lent money at zero interest rate to students to invest in their tertiary education. And, well, regardless of thanks to who, that's what they're doing. And so you've got to manage that on the balance sheet. So It's $10.3 billion. Whatever, if it's interest-free or whatever, it's still a significant item on our balance sheet. So it's very good that it's looked after, measured, administered as best and as efficiently as possible, Mr. Speaker. And as other members have noted, there's actually no policy change here. It's mostly about the administration and the implementation of the student loan scheme, the interest-free student loan scheme, which has gone across governments and continues under this government. Just a couple of points, Mr. Speaker. Look, national government, we're working for better value for every single dollar in tertiary education. Every single dollar. So funding more student places than ever before, well, that's part of our finding efficiencies in the sector. We do want a more accountable and higher performing sector and higher participation in the sector, Mr. Speaker. But with the constraints around the budget, every single cent, every single dollar is a very precious cent and dollar, and we owe it to taxpayers and future taxpayers who do have a student loan right now, that actually we use those tax dollars as efficiently as possible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.